Hello, this is 𝗪𝗏𝗟 and you're watching another episode of The Shift, and this is where we talk about everything around sustainability. Today we're going to talk about a carbon exchange. Bursa Carbon Exchange, BCX, Malaysia's voluntary carbon market, or VCM exchange, is part of the nation's commitment towards achieving net zero greenhouse gas or GHG emissions as early as 2050. Now, BCX is a spot exchange that facilitates the trading of high-quality carbon credits via standardized carbon contracts, and corporates may purchase these credits to offset their carbon footprint, while the sale of carbon credits in return will help to finance and drive the development of domestic GHG emission reduction and removal solutions and projects. I'm here with Dr. Chen Wei-nee, Head of Carbon Market at Bursa Malaysia Berhad, to find out what it all means. I read that all, got it from your website, trying to understand, but never mind, you're here to explain a little bit more. Good to have you here, Dr. Chen. Now, in a nutshell, can you explain what the BCX aims to do and why was this mooted globally and here in Malaysia?
Thank you very much, Freda. First of all, thank you for inviting Bursa Malaysia to be at the Shift and to provide, of course, an opportunity for sharing of what BCX is doing. Right. BCX stands for the Bursa Carbon Exchange. I think before I answer to that, maybe I would like to give your viewers an explanation of the carbon markets. Right. So essentially, there are two types of carbon markets that exist today. One is a voluntary carbon market. The other is a compliance market. Now, in the voluntary carbon market, it is based on a reward mechanism. Companies are not compelled by governments to actually do any decarbonizing projects, but they do so, and they can find opportunities to actually monetize through the sales of carbon credit. So it is a reward base in a sense that if you do decarbonizing activities, which reduces emissions from entering into the atmosphere, or avoids emissions from entering into the atmosphere, or removes emissions from entering into the atmosphere, companies are actually rewarded through sales of carbon credits. Now, in a compliance mechanism, companies are compelled by government regulations to maintain their emissions below a certain value. And if you exceed that particular threshold, then you would be expected to pay a price for it, whether it is through a carbon tax regime or an emissions trading scheme. But I would like to think of it as a penalty base, essentially, because if you emit more than you should, then you would be penalized by paying a price. Now, your question is, why is BCX doing that? So I think the Malaysian government, my background is basically, I've spent more than nearly 14 years supporting the Ministry of Energy with the energy transition in an electricity space. I think the Malaysian government has for quite some time focused on supporting more of renewables, supporting more of energy efficiency. And while this has been a very good result for us, today we see that we have a very flourishing, especially solar industry. We do realize that globally, just doing renewables and energy efficiency will not get us to the net zero path. So if you look at the learning from the IEA, they projected that 1/3 of the global emissions would need to be abated, and this mechanism can be supported, could come from the carbon market. In fact, if you look at a recent report from the World Economic Forum, they have actually informed that the voluntary carbon market space is one of a very effective mechanism to provide channel private financing to support these decarbonizing activities. And it really helps the country, because countries that have pledged their nationally determined contributions, their NDC under the Paris Agreement, through the support of the financing from a VCM, a voluntary carbon market space, they can actually achieve their NDC targets faster. And this is despite the fact that these carbon credits, if they are generated in Malaysia and sold to a foreign corporates in another country, it will not jeopardize our NDC. Our NDC remains intact, and it's a very powerful mechanism. World Bank has actually just come out as well on their report that says that companies and countries who supported the carbon market, they can reach their NDC by 2030 at half the cost. So this is some of the support that we are getting from this carbon market space.
And I guess where countries that are compliant, I guess these would be more developed countries. And so at this point, we're sort of like getting into that space, perhaps down the road, and for people to understand at this point.
That's right, you're right. precisely that for a longest time, we have been focusing, like I said, on the renewable space, and putting a price on carbon has never been very easily implementable. You know, it needs a lot of political capital and willpower to do that. And I think just prior to the COP26 at Glasgow, the Malaysian government decided that it is time for Malaysia to put a price on carbon. But before we jump straight into a compliance carbon market, either it's in a form of carbon tax or emissions trading scheme, the government will do it in a very staged manner by introducing a voluntary carbon market space. And that's where they have actually, you know, in the budget, the tabling of the budget 2022, the Malaysian government announced that Bursa Malaysia will be given that mandate to implement a Shariah-compliant carbon exchange. We actually have 𝗬𝗵𝗫, the Minister of the Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. He actually launched, and it is the Bursa Carbon Exchange is really the world's first Shariah-compliant carbon exchange.
Okay, in the world's first. Okay, now there are a number of carbon exchanges also mushrooming in the region. You've got Singapore, you've got Indonesia, Thailand, Hong Kong, Japan. So what are the unique selling points of BCX?
Very good question. I think one of the unique selling point is, of course, the fact that we are actually linked to government. We are a national multi-asset exchange. And when we are linked to government, we play a very critical and strategic roles of bridging between the federal, the state government, the private sector, and private sector could be international and as well as domestic, to actually moot up and grow an ecosystem. For Bursa, the mandate is never just to run and manage an exchange. It is actually the ultimate end goal is to grow a VCM ecosystem so that it will enable our country to actually transit from a browner economy to one that has got a low carbon and basically to future-proof the entire country's economy. So this is the mandate that was given to Bursa.
Right, okay. So Bursa Malaysia intends to offer standardized carbon credit products for trading via a rules-based carbon exchange, and there will be a distinct product categories for carbon credits derived from nature-based solutions and technologies that avoid, reduce, or remove GHG emissions. So BCX will aggregate carbon credits that share similar traits and fundamentals with vintages 2016 onwards. What have I just said? And can you please explain that to me?
Right. So I think for the BCX, basically what we are trying to encourage, especially for the domestic corporates, is an easier way to purchase carbon credits. And basically for now, if you want to purchase carbon credits, you would go through a broker. And most companies, they may not have the sophisticated level in terms of doing a duty on the carbon projects that supplies these carbon credits. So what BCX does is that it makes these purchases easier by presetting criteria and grouping them into categories so that if your company has a certain policy on the type of carbon credits that you need to purchase, then we will actually make that purchasing easier for you. So let me give you an example. If your company will only support nature-based projects that come from Malaysia, and it must come with core benefits. Core benefits means that that particular project benefited climate adaptation, the community, and biodiversity. If this is what your company is looking for, we have standardized product with projects that contribute to these companies fitting into that particular product description. So it makes your corporate's purchase a lot easier. And we also make sure that the standards which these projects are registered with are international standards. They are not bogus standards that is not recognized. These are well-known and accepted standards. And even for the vintage, we are very careful that we only accept carbon credits that are actually not older than 2016. So for the benefit of the viewers, the vintage basically means the year which the carbon credits are generated. And of course, the newer credits, they have higher value. They are recognized as having higher quality. So that's the reason why we bundle all the different types of products. Importantly, the products, we single out Malaysian nature-based and Malaysia tech-based because we want to provide a product differentiation which stands apart from the other exchanges.
Right. And I guess even when you're going out right now, talking to banks or what have you, or companies, what is the level of understanding at this point?
Good question. So I think for Bursa, we have spent the last 18 months conducting almost monthly webinars, sessions on awareness.
Right.
And we have felt that over the process of 18 months, the ones that we have been giving our talks to, and there's a few thousands in our database that we invited each month, we noticed that the kind of questions have actually evolved. And they're not surprising, because the way they have evolved, they were actually following the trends of the renewable energy, meaning to say, first of all, what is VCM? Then, what are the opportunities for us? Then, how do we onboard this kind of projects? How do we secure financing? So all these steps have already been predicted. So that's why, aside from doing the monthly sessions, awareness session, this year we actually partnered with the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. It's a government agency under NREC, to develop this VCM handbook. And alongside with that, MGTC also launched their VCM directory that contains who are the project developers, who are the carbon consultants, the auditors who are actually auditing the carbon projects. All these are ecosystems that we put in place so that we can grow an ecosystem. We are very pleased to say that the MOF have accepted Bursa's proposal to offer further tax incentives for expenses related to carbon projects on a proviso. Of course, these companies are Malaysian companies. So these are some of the things that Bursa is actually trying to do to actually quickly scale up the ecosystem in the country.
And I guess the handbook, all those resources, people can get it online as well. Just easily downloadable. Now, the Verified Carbon Standard, or better known as VERA, is being used by BCX. Why? Are there other plans to adopt other standards beyond VERA?
Right. So the reason why we adopt VERA is because today VERA occupies about 70% of the market share in terms of carbon credits issued under a global voluntary carbon market space. We have in line a plan to actually adopt the gold standard. So the gold standard is by far the second largest standards. They occupy around 17% of the market share. So when we have both the VERA and the gold standard, we would have covered quite a broad standards already in terms of the issuance of the carbon credits for trading.
Right. So what are your your challenges faced, and how do you plan to address them? For instance, what is the current, we talked about that, the level of understanding has improved, right? What are the plans for further awareness and education?
Yeah, I think we are actually working together still continuously with partners. In fact, this year we just signed in the year 2023, we signed a memorandum of collaboration with CIMB Bank, and we are also signing other collaborations with other stakeholders as well. And we plan to actually use different strengths of the partners to provide awareness to our participants. We are not just limiting, of course, to the Malaysian participants, bearing in mind that most of the project developers are international. We are making use of the platforms such as the COP. In fact, last year in COP28, we actually brought about our VCM ecosystem to actually try to reach out to attract more of these international investors to Malaysia. This would be one of our main goals as well.
Okay. And also, Bursa Malaysia announced that the BCX plans to offer renewable energy certificates, RECs, by Q3 of 2024, right? So what are RECs and how do they differ from carbon credits?
Right, that's a very good question. So first of all, RECs is another type of an environmental product. And RECs stands for Renewable Energy Certificate. And every single REC is actually denoting or indicating that it's actually generated from a renewable energy source, and one REC is equivalent to 1 megawatt hour. So renewable RECs actually has been in Malaysia since 2018. Today, the RECs market in Malaysia is a little bit more mature compared to the carbon credits.
Right.
And for the last 1.5 years, when we have actually talked with corporates, and the feedback that we're getting from corporates is that they would desire for the BCX to actually offer RECs as well.
Right.
And this is actually aligning with our vision because Bursa today is a multi-asset exchange and the BCX aspires to be a multi-environmental product exchange. We are not just limiting ourselves to carbon credit, although today we're doing carbon credit, but we are looking to offer RECs and then also maybe in the future years, biodiversity credits or plastic credits. You know, we want to actually basically provide a supermarket full of different products to be able to actually high grade our companies, whether it is listed or not listed companies, so that they are internationally competitive. So therefore, this particular RECs that we are offering, of course, it will be basically an unbundled RECs, meaning to say that it is RECs not sold together with electricity. Yeah, it is only an environmental attribute.
Right. Very interesting. When you talk about this and we hear this, is it just the domain of the public listed companies, the larger corporations? An SME listening to this now, does it concern me? How does it affect me down the road? Would you be able to paint a picture?
Yes, sure. I think when it comes to a corporate carbon accounting, it's going to get slightly technical, so bear with me. There is a Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. Scope 1 is the direct emissions, Scope 2 is purchased electricity, and Scope 3 is from your supply chain. Eventually, companies will need to ensure that the companies that they deal with in their supply chain, whether it's upstream or downstream, to go green.
Right.
So therefore, while corporates, especially the public listed companies, the GOCs and the GLICs in Malaysia, they are actually at the forefront to actually chart the path. The ultimate end goal is that their surrounding suppliers, the SMEs, will follow suit. And it is for their own betterment because it means that the future for them in terms of their business is they're going to future-proof that business. In fact, if you look at the outcome of the inaugural auction for carbon credits in March of this year, all of the companies, they are actually all from the public listed companies or they are from the GLICs. And it was very interesting that when BCX went live in September, most companies that took part in the Go Live, they were actually not so much from the GLICs and the PLCs, but they were from the SMEs.
Okay.
So we can see that even for the SMEs, they are looking at their big brothers. In March, they went in. So therefore, let us have a try and dabble with it and just try to understand what is this carbon market all about. And you can see these kind of nuances coming in.
Okay. Which is great, right? I mean, they're paying attention. I guess this is the final question, the call to action, right? The call to action, what else would you like to see, whether it's the public listed SMEs, how else would you like them to participate? Do you want more people getting involved? And if so, how?
Right. I think thanks a lot for providing this opportunity again. I think for the Bursa Carbon Exchange, I just want to share with the viewers that at the moment, Bursa Carbon Exchange is providing a waiver for the onboarding fee, which otherwise would have cost 6,000 ringgit per participants. So therefore, I really encourage them to be on board. A lot of the times, the questions that were asked is that, is there any obligation that I must buy immediately when I actually on board? The answer is no, you do not have to. But the point is that this particular carbon exchange provides you an avenue to actually explore and understand, which is the whole reason why the Bursa Carbon Exchange is set up in your backyard, to actually provide you an opportunity. You do not have to get out of Malaysia to understand this. And it also provides an opportunity for you not just to purchase carbon credit, but to see how you can be involved in the ecosystem, be a supplier, to maybe even consider investing in business that basically produce carbon credits, or you can do a cost recovery. If your companies have invested significantly in a decarbonizing project that has a methodology that supports it, you can do a cost recovery and your shareholders will be very happy for the steps that you have taken. So I think the key message here is that sustainability doesn't have to be always very expensive. There are ways that you can see how you can possibly do a cost recovery so that it actually gives back the biggest value to your shareholders and you do your business sustainability with sustainability in mind.
Okay, all right. Thank you for explaining this. And of course, you can get more information, go to your website. Of course, you've also tied up with the Ministry of Green Tech as well. So you can get more information there. I've been speaking to Dr. Chen Wei-nee from Bursa, Malaysia, talking about BCX, and you've been watching The Shift.